Hey, Tom from the Run Testers. In this video, we are going to be doing our full review of the Asics Gel-Nimbus 27. Let's take a look. The Asics Gel-Nimbus 27 costs £180 or $165. It weighs 306 grams or 10.8 ounces for men in a size 8, and the drop is 8mm. The Asics Gel-Nimbus 27 isn't a drastic update to its predecessor, but it does include a couple of big updates to improve the overall comfort of the shoe. The most important of those is an increase in the stack height of FF Blast Eco midsole foam by 2mm to add even more cushioning to the ride, and the other is a new engineered jacquard mesh upper to improve comfort and breathability. In the rear of the shoe, you'll still find the same pure gel technology designed to improve shock absorption, and there's an ultralight X55 sock liner to add even more cushioning to the ride. Like the earlier versions, there's still plenty of padding across the upper, including a knit rib collar, as well as a gusseted tongue wing fit system to ensure a good fit. On the outsole is a hybrid Asics grip to provide grip and protect the midsole.
Comes to the fit of the Asics Gel-Nimbus 27. I have my usual size here, which is a UK 9 or a US 10, and it fits me really well. I've got no concerns at all about the fit. I would stick to your normal running shoe size. As I'm someone who's slightly on the fence between a 9 and an 8.5 UK, it's quite roomy in the toe box for me, but not in a way that I'd consider too roomy for a big easy day cruiser like this. So yeah, all round was very happy with the fit. Good hold around the heel and midfoot. There is a lot of kind of cushioning at the back here, but it didn't irritate my Achilles at all. Sometimes found actually when walking that the slightly high collar here would feel a bit weird under my ankle, but actually on the run that was never a problem. So yeah, all round nice comfortable fit as you expect. I'd stick to your normal size with a Nimbus, same size I've used for the past 3 generations of the shoe.
Let's give you a quick word on fit then, and I think this is pretty much more of the same as the Asics Gel-Nimbus 27. You've got really ample room at the end of the toe box, nice amount of clearance across the top of the toes, there's plenty of flex. These jacquard uppers are a bit more structured than you got with the knit from the 26, but this is still a really roomy, happy shoe to run long distance in. So it oodles with space basically, lots of flex for the toes. Comes back up, I get good lockdown across the midfoot, no problem there. We've got these tongues that they're sort of quite loose, they're sort of knitted. They just take the edge off, but they aren't maybe as padded as some. You do have to make sure you get them in the right place. Into the heel collars, I think you've got exactly the same heel package as you've got in the 26, and they hold well. There's lots of plush padding, which creates good foot security. A little bit of a heel counter here that's not too stiff, but very present, holds you nicely. I had no slipping, no problems with lockdown, and I would recommend going true to size in these shoes.
So fit for me has been very good overall in the Gel-Nimbus 27. I've got mine in a UK size 8. That's my typical running shoe size. That's generally the shoe size that works best for me in Asics shoes. That's the same shoe size that I had the Gel-Nimbus 25 in. I didn't test the Gel-Nimbus 26. Now, like my experience with the Gel-Nimbus 25, given I've got quite skinny, narrow feet, I would say the fit is naturally very roomy and accommodating, and you know, for me, that's been absolutely fine, given also that there is a wider fit option here, but I think for most people, going for that standard fit is going to be generally fine. I think, you know, when I talk about that room, I think that's particularly in the middle section of the shoe, I think in the toe box as well, where I think personally I would take maybe things being reined in a little bit to give you something that sits a little bit closer. But I think, you know, it hasn't been an issue having that kind of roomy, kind of spacious toe box for me in my running time. I think other things to mention here, I think in terms of getting a good lockdown here, I think it does take a little bit of work here. I think, you know, given the material, which is quite skinny and stretchy, and that kind of stretchy tongue you're getting here, I do find you have to pull them in quite tightly, those laces, to get a good kind of lockdown there. When you get further back into the shoe, you've got a fair amount of padding there. I think, you know, particularly in the inside of the heel collar, the kind of heel counter is, you know, is a pretty flexible one. Didn't cause any kind of irritation for me at my Achilles, and there's definitely some elements there creating that kind of supportive kind of comfort at you're getting at the heel of this shoe. So yeah, overall, very good fit for me. As I said, I personally would take something maybe that sat a little bit closer to my feet, but I think in terms of my running time, it's been absolutely fine. And I think unless you want a really spacious, roomy, kind of wider fit option, going for that standard fit option and going true to size should be absolutely fine for most people.
So the fit for me in the Gel-Nimbus 27, I have a size 8 foot. I also have very average width feet. I don't tend to have problems with shoes very often. The Gel-Nimbus 27, absolutely perfect. There's plenty of space in the forefoot for me. It's not the widest shoe in the world, but it's definitely wide enough on my feet, and they are pretty average. There is a wider version of the shoe as well, so you can get that. But for me, with my average width feet and average sized feet for a size 8 shoe, it's absolutely fine. Very, very comfortable. I had no issues. I really like the upper design. There's a little bit of give in it, so it's quite comfortable around the sides of the foot, and there's loads of padding in it as well. It's definitely a shoe designed for comfort. I would definitely stay to my size in the Gel-Nimbus 27.
Run test then, and in testing I've logged around 40 kilometers in the Gel-Nimbus 27. Lots of slow and easy, which is largely the intended purpose for this shoe, but I've thrown in some faster miles as well. Tried building to a bit of marathon pace on a progression run just to see how they pick up. Now the big difference here is obviously that extra 2 mils of softer tuned cushioning that Asics has managed to add to the stack without increasing the overall weight, and that does change the ride somewhat between the 26 and the 27, but essentially what you get is a shoe that stays pretty true, I think, to the Nimbus heritage. Delivers a plush, soft, cushioned comfort ride that's happiest when you're moving slower, ticking out those kind of easy miles. It's not like the Nimbus 26 wasn't cushioned and plush and impact eating, but the 27 now offers more of that. There's more protection, more softness, more long haul comfort. And I think there's also a smidge more bounce and energy coming back from the midsole as well. Not enough to make me want to run a lot of marathon pace miles in this shoe, which is generally a bit heavy. It's ultimately still a heavier shoe, but you can do marathon pace miles if you really need to, though it's a bit harder work for the legs, I find. Now, I also did a side-by-side mile with the 26 on one foot and the 27 on the other, and weight-wise on the run, I think the shoes feel the same. There's perhaps a touch less stability in the Nimbus 27 because you've got the extra softness and you've got a bit higher off the ground, but it's still a big, wide, stable shoe, stable platform to run off. I really like the uppers. I think the changes are a step on. There's a bit more structure to the jacquard than you got with the knit. It's a minor difference here overall in terms of how it wraps the foot, and overall I wouldn't say one is more comfortable than the other, but I do like the more premium feel, and I think it looks nicer than you've got with the old 26 knit. I still generally prefer less shoe on the foot, something lighter and more compact for most of my runs, but I still think this generation of the Nimbus delivers a happy cushioned ride that if that's your thing, you'll still really enjoy.
So in terms of my running time in the Gel-Nimbus 27, I would say overall it's been very comfortable. I would say it's been a very reliable shoe to run in. It's a very stable shoe to kind of spend time in. You know, runs very smoothly as well. I do think there are some changes here from the previous Gel-Nimbus, which I tested the Gel-Nimbus 25, and given that the Gel-Nimbus 26 was really around kind of changes with the outsole, the core experience being very similar to the Gel-Nimbus 25, I think there, as I said, some changes here that I think do make it a nicer shoe to be one that you are, you know, is designed to absorb a lot of your running time. This is a cushioned shoe, a cushioned daily trainer shoe that for me very much veers on that kind of easy to kind of recovery pace, but I have found I've been able to run at more moderate running paces in this shoe, and it hasn't felt, you know, totally kind of awkward to do that. But I do think this is a shoe built for those kind of, you know, when your legs are tired and you are doing those kind of easier runs and maybe kind of longer runs as well, but you're not running at your hardest or fastest. Now, one of the big changes here is you're getting a little bit more of that FF Blast Eco foam here, which is, you know, used in the Super Blast 2 but not on its own. And then, you know, we've seen with the Nova Blast 5, you know, Asics has moved away from the Eco Plus kind of foam and used that kind of new FF Blast Max foam, which is definitely softer compared to this. Now, having that extra you know stack of that foam doesn't make it a inherently kind of plusher shoe than the previous shoes. I think, you know, gives you, I would say, a lot more protection, and, you know, that would be the main quality, I would say. I think the biggest change for me has been really about where that foam, you know, is setting, and I feel like the geometry of the shoe, the slight changes for me have made it a nicer shoe to run in. I think, as I said, for those paces, those easy recovery paces, I just found the Gel-Nimbus 25, the ride felt a little bit dull for me. I don't think it rolled through as nicely, and I feel like that has changed for me with the Gel-Nimbus 27. I think, as I said, I have been able to run kind of more moderate paces in this, and it's felt comfortable to do that. It would be better if it was a lighter shoe, and I think that would give it a touch more versatility, but I do think overall it's been a nicer shoe, and I think for me some improvements from the Gel-Nimbus 25 for me. I think outsole wise, I think there's not a huge, you know, major difference for me. I run in a mixture of dry and wet conditions, and for me, I think, you know, this isn't the best outsole grip that you're going to get on a cushioned daily trainer shoe, but I think it offers enough for me. I think given, how most people are probably going to use this shoe, and as I say, ticking off a lot of your training miles when you're not running at your fastest, then I think it's going to be generally fine. I would be sticking to roads and pavements, maybe handling a little bit of those kind of lighter trails. So yeah, my experience has been very good overall. Very much feels like a Gel-Nimbus. I do think the real story here is that the geometry has changed and made it a nicer shoe to tick that running time off, and I do think makes it a nicer shoe for me than the Gel-Nimbus 25. Is it the cushioned, or the best kind of Asics cushioned daily trainer shoe you should get? I'll get into that in the verdict and more.
So the Gel-Nimbus line, or the last two versions of it, which were the updated versions of the shoe, the previous versions I never really got on with, but the last two versions I've always enjoyed. I've always found them to be shoes that do what they say on the tin. They're a comfortable daily shoe. You can do easy runs in them, recovery runs, longer runs. The changes to this version of the shoe, essentially from the perspective of the experience of the ride, is that midsole, a little bit extra midsole foam in there. And for me, it doesn't massively change the ride. I'm getting a very similar experience to what I got from the previous two versions of the shoe. I think it probably does feel a little bit softer because you get a little bit more of that midsole foam in there. But for me, the way that I run in this shoe, I'm a midfoot striker, so I'm hitting it right in the middle. The way the geometry of the shoe works, and the previous two versions of the shoe, I don't get much of a roll through in this shoe. It's a very comfortable shoe to wear, but I just don't get any sort of transition or comfortable transition that makes it in any way versatile. It still is a very slappy shoe for me. Not as slappy as the first, the 25. That was the slappiest version of the new versions of the shoe. It's not as slappy as that, but it is quite slappy for me. And I think the reason is that it does have this quite flat bottom section of the shoe. I know Nick is a heel striker, so he's probably benefiting a lot more from this big wedge of midsole foam at the back. For me, I'm hitting it dead on this flat section, and I'm not really getting any sort of transition from it. That's not a massively bad thing if you're just buying this shoe for comfort and those easy day runs, those longer sessions where you just want comfort. The runs that I've done in it, I've not found it to be particularly versatile. It's fine, it's comfortable, it's nicely stable for a max stack shoe, and as a result it's probably quite accessible for a lot of people who want a load of cushioning but don't necessarily want a really wobbly or soft shoe, which can be the case with a lot of max stack shoes at the moment. So over those runs, what I've really found about the shoe is that it's very much the same as what I've experienced in those two previous versions. It's a solid shoe that is just very good for comfort, and everything about the shoe really screams comfort. The upper, the way the midsole sits. I did try and pick up the pace in it on a couple of runs. Didn't really enjoy it. One, because I really started slapping it quite hard. I was actually at one point where my girlfriend was about 2 streets away walking the dog, and she said she could hear me coming back home. So it is quite a loud shoe from that perspective, and it really does, when you pick up the pace, I really start hitting that midsection really hard. So for longer runs, I think it's I've only got up to 15k in this shoe, but for that it was really nice. I don't think about this shoe on my feet when it's on there. It just feels very comfortable. I don't have to worry about the stability of the shoe or anything like that. So I think really it's a shoe that is quite nicely balanced if you're looking for a lot of cushioning, whereas that's not always the case with these max stack shoes. The outsole of the shoe, it does have quite a lot of exposed areas from that midsole foam. The rubber itself is fine. I wouldn't say it's the grippiest outsole on any shoe I've tested, but I haven't had any problems on it on wet pavements. The exposed section here, I've not seen any issues on it so far, but that does concern me a little bit because this rubber doesn't go out very far from the midsole foam. So that is just a concern which I think I'll just keep an eye on as I continue to use these shoes. All in all though, outsole is fine, just nothing that impressive when compared to some of the better outsoles on the market.
So I've done about 60k in the Asics Gel-Nimbus 27 now, using for a mix of easy and long runs and one progression run, moving from an easy to slightly faster paces by the end. And on my first run, I'd say that the main update that Asics had really done to the shoe was to bring it out in teal and send me a teal shoe, which is a smart thing to do. It immediately made me like the shoe a lot more than previous versions, just straight away, because teal is the best colour, we all know this. But actually, I didn't think it changed much at all on the run. Like, it has got a little bit of a higher stack height, but in that first run I thought, yeah, it's the Nimbus, it's nice, comfortable, it's protective, cushy, solid enough job. But actually, as I've done more runs in the shoe and done different types of runs in the shoe, I started to like it a bit more, and I do think it actually is, a sneakily big upgrade on the previous models of the shoe. So So you've got a little bit more stack height there, which doesn't add too much really in terms of the overall comfort of the shoe. It was already a very comfortable shoe, but I think the extra under the forefoot is important, and I think actually the geometry has been changed a bit more on the shoe, and that's what's made me enjoy it a bit more, especially as a heel striker. I think you've now got a much smoother transition from heel to toe. Like, I get quite a slappy ride with the Gel-Nimbus 25 and 26, and actually it will sometimes even create a bit of discomfort coming through on the shoe, and I think it's definitely been smoothed out here. I really noticed it when I was running at slightly faster paces in the shoe, when I did that easy to steady run. Like in the previous models, as I started to increase the speed, it would feel quite slappy and it wouldn't feel great at all. Like, it's not really the best shoe for speed work still, because it's quite heavy and big, but it definitely felt less slappy and more comfortable to me. Like, it's still slightly slappy shoe, but definitely less slappy than previous models, and I do think the heel's been redesigned to just ride a bit more smoothly, and I really did notice that as a heel striker, and it made it a lot more enjoyable on long runs and when I was moving at slightly faster paces at all. So like I said, I did that easy to steady run, pretty standard daily training run, but moving down towards almost marathon pace by the end, and I thought, it's going to feel a bit unpleasant in the shoe because it is quite big, but no, not at all. I think it's got a stiffer and faster ride than I think I expected, and you'd probably expect from a shoe like this. I'm not going to say it's a super versatile shoe that I'd love to go do a load of speed work in it, but I do think it now has a bit more versatility to it, and even as a heavy shoe, I think it does work as a daily trainer for people who want a really cushioned ride but want a shoe that can then do kind of tempo efforts, the odds kind of long session, long runs, that kind of thing. I think you can do them okay in the Gel-Nimbus 27 if you're not that fussed about those kind of sessions. You're not someone like me who's someone who have a rotation, have a dedicated speed work shoe for those kind of runs. If you just want one shoe to do lots of different kinds of runs, then the Nimbus 27 is actually better than I expected for such a big shoe, while obviously really excelling on those nice relaxed easy runs as well because of the comfort you have underfoot. So like I say, the ride is a little bit stiffer than I expected, and some people might not like that so much in easy shoe, but I think it's probably the kind of thing that breaks in a little bit. Like, it's eased a bit over the first few runs already, and I didn't find it uncomfortable at all. But yeah, it's probably a slightly different feeling than you might expect from a shoe like this. When you step into it, you're not getting that soft squishy feeling you get on some of these big max cushion shoes like the 1080 line or the Nike Invincible or something like that. Like, it has a bit of firmness to it and resiliency while still being really comfortable, and that I think does help with the smoothness and the speediness of the transition from heel to toe, which is something that I find comfortable. Like, it's not really the definition of comfort, but have that smooth and natural transition from heel to toe that just means I can tick over without thinking about the shoe too much is almost how I define comfort on those easy and long runs. And the Gel-Nimbus, for such a big shoe, does disappear on the foot really nicely. So after a pretty standard first run that I thought was going to be much the same as previous models, I've actually ended up really enjoying the Gel-Nimbus 27 more than I expected. I think it's a really natural feeling shoe for such a big shoe, and you do get a little bit more versatility than you might expect. And yeah, it comes in teal, so that's fantastic.
So my verdict on the Asics Gel-Nimbus 27 is that this is a very solid update to the Gel-Nimbus line, and for me personally it does feel like an upgrade on the previous Gel-Nimbus shoes. I think particularly from a ride point of view, and I think if you are looking for a shoe that is very comfortable, very protective, I think very stable, and can really help you kind of tick off that running mileage, then this is a shoe that absolutely can do it. I think if you're looking for your first running shoe, this is a good option. If you're looking for a good long run shoe, this is going to fit the bill as well. I think when you look at the other kind of cushioned daily trainer shoes and Asics' kind of range of shoes, I think there becomes a bit of a problem. I think, you look at the Nova Blast 5, which is cheaper, and I think you would use for the same types of runs as the Gel-Nimbus 27, which is a more expensive shoe. I think that is a shoe that can work for long runs as well. I think it gives you that comfort as well and that protection in a slightly different way, but I still think in a very effective way. I do think there are Super Blast 2 qualities in the Gel-Nimbus, but that's really around the midsole. And, when you look at what you get in the Super Blast 2, and, it just has a quicker feel to it. It has a lighter, overall weight as well. It is inherently a more versatile shoe compared to the Gel-Nimbus 27. I think if you look outside the Asics range, I think it becomes a problem as well, again, for the Gel-Nimbus, particularly around the midsole foam, and just having other midsole foams that are just a bit more enjoyable, just has a little bit more fun about it. I think you look at what you're getting in kind of Brooks's range, particularly at the moment. I think you look at Saucony as well, what you're getting from New Balance as well. So I think from that point of view, at this kind of range, this type of shoe, maybe Asics is playing a little bit of catch up or is falling a little bit behind, but crucially it does have something in the Nova Blast 5, and I think that FF Blast Max foam, which I think probably for me, will probably end up in the Gel-Nimbus some way down the line, if not, very soon, in the next generation of the Gel-Nimbus. But for me, I've had a very good experience with the Gel-Nimbus 27. I do think it's an improvement on the Gel-Nimbus 25, which I tested, and the Gel-Nimbus 26, which, wasn't massively changed from the Gel-Nimbus 25. And I think if you like the Gel-Nimbus range, the most recent range, and you like the idea of something that just has a little bit more of a noticeable kind of, rocker and ride in it, then I think that's what you're going to get in the Gel-Nimbus 27. If you're looking for the best kind of value cushion daily trainer shoe, the most memorable shoe, this is probably not it, but I do think a lot of people are going to like what you get from the Gel-Nimbus 27.
So my verdict on the Asics Gel-Nimbus 27, I think it's pretty much more of the same of what you're getting from the previous two versions of the Gel-Nimbus line. It's a very stable, comfortable, accessible shoe if you're looking for easy runs, longer runs, recovery runs, that sort of thing. I don't think it's particularly versatile still. I don't think the updates that have been made to the midsole foam have had a dramatic impact on its versatility. I would pretty much only ever use this for those easier runs, daily runs where I'm going out and ticking off the miles and I'm not really bothered about the speed. For me, that's probably going to be about 5-minute kilometers, 5-minute 15 kilometers. Feels fine at those paces. Picking up the pace in this, getting down to like 4:30, doesn't feel very comfortable, doesn't feel like it wants to do that, and definitely I don't get a lot of smooth transition from the geometry of the shoe. It feels very much like I'm landing on it, it's comfy, and then I'm pushing off again. It doesn't feel like there's any sort of comfortable, smooth transition from this geometry. There are a lot of alternatives to the shoe, and at £180, this is quite an expensive shoe. I know a lot of shoes are getting quite expensive now, but I've always thought the Nimbus line is a very expensive shoe for what you get from it. For me, I look at something like the New Balance More V5. It's considerably cheaper than a shoe, a little bit softer now, but I just get better transition from that shoe. I feel like it just smoothly glides me forward as I'm maintaining a nice consistent pace at like 5:20 or something like that. And I get a lot more of that transition from that shoe. So I definitely go for some like New Balance More V5 for my style of running over the Nimbus. I think that shoes like the 1080 V14, quite similar in a lot of ways to the shoe, but I do think that the 1080 is a little bit more versatile in the more recent version. It just has a little bit of a smoother ride for me and just feels a little bit lighter on the feet. And then something like the Brooks Glycerin Max, I think is very similar in this shoe to a lot of ways, but the only difference is I just think it's a little bit more versatile. Not massively, but I would prefer that shoe to this shoe if I was doing varied training sessions in it and I wanted something maybe for marathon training or something like this. I probably would use this shoe primarily always for those easy runs or daily runs where I'm going up to about 15k or something, but I definitely wouldn't try and do anything faster in this shoe.
So I definitely enjoyed my time in the Asics Gel-Nimbus 27. I think it's one of the better big max cushion shoes out there. Probably put it in line with the Saucony Hurricane 24 as my favourite of these big max cushion shoes, which are not generally the kind of shoes I go for. Like, so even on my easy runs, long runs, I tend to prefer to be in something that's a little bit smaller and lighter and just a bit more dynamic and ticks over a bit better. But the Gel-Nimbus 27 would be a contender for my rotation. If I was going to have a big max cushion shoe in there, it would be between this and the Saucony Hurricane 24, which I also think is an excellent shoe that runs a lot lighter than it is, has a nice rocker, has a little bit of resiliency to push against, and that's billed more as a stability shoe and has maybe a few more stability features, but the Gel-Nimbus 27 is also a very stable shoe for a neutral shoe, and wouldn't really worry about it on that front at all despite the high stack. So a really good shoe. I think a nice update on the previous model. I still think the previous model is more similar than different to this shoe. I prefer the ride on this shoe for sure, and I'd get it over the Gel-Nimbus 25 or 26 if there was only a little price difference. If you are finding the older shoe at a massive discount, then I'd probably still get that because that is still a good, comfortable, easy day shoe. But at the same time, I do think this is a better shoe and one I enjoyed a lot more than the previous model. So I do think it's a successful update, despite the fact it felt like quite a minor update to me initially. Also in the Asics range, you have the Nova Blast, of course. Now, the Nova Blast 5, I really like as well. I think that's a good shoe that also had, I think, a redesigned heel bevel this year that made it a smoother riding shoe. Nova Blast is still really cushioned. That's probably the shoe I'd go for as more of a generalist, cushioned daily trainer. Like, it's a lot lighter than the Gel-Nimbus 27, has a bit more versatility. They're both really good shoes. I think they almost do quite similar jobs, so I'd just get the lighter shoe in the Nova Blast and the cheaper shoe as well. But if you're a slightly heavier runner or really crave like loads of cushioning underfoot, then the Gel-Nimbus 27 I think does a really good job and will provide that at that slightly higher price. A few other shoes, in this big max cushion market, I think the 1080 V14 is a lighter shoe and a slightly smaller shoe, and that feels a bit more dynamic and maybe has a slightly more exciting foam than the Gel-Nimbus 27. I think that's another one that I think has a bit more versatility and almost feels more like a similar shoe to the Nova Blast than the Gel-Nimbus these days for me, because it is a little bit lower stack and feels a bit more like a cushioned daily trainer. This feels a bit more built just as a max stack shoe, even though I do think it is a bit more versatile than you might expect. I think I prefer it to something like the Saucony Triumph 22, which is just not a shoe I really got on with that well. There's a Brooks Glycerin Max, which is a bit more expensive and has quite a similar vibe actually, a big max cushion shoe, a bit of resiliency there. You've probably got a livelier foam with the Glycerin Max, but you're paying a bit more for it and don't necessarily think it's a much better shoe for faster runs or anything like that. And the Gel-Nimbus 27 is certainly as good, if not a little bit better, for just all-out easy runs. So yeah, that'd be a bit of a toss-up. There's the Glycerin 22 coming as well, which looks interesting. So all round, I think this is one of the better max cushion shoes out there for sure. It's probably one of my favourites, like I say, with the Saucony Hurricane 24. Just got a ride that is big and cushioned, but turns over nice and speedily, feels quite natural, has a bit more versatility than you expect, and is nice and smooth from heel to toe with a little bit reduced slappiness compared to previous models. So a successful update for me, the Asics Gel-Nimbus 27.
Verdict then, Nimbus fans are going to like this Nimbus because this is textbook Nimbus, just softer, more cushioned without adding any extra weight. That's a trend I think we're going to see a lot of as the stack heights rise across many shoes with new light performance foams coming across the lineups. For me, the Nimbus is a shoe that's a bit limited on versatility. I'd only tend to use it for my slowest runs. I think that's still the case despite there being a little bit extra energy out of the midsole. It wasn't great at marathon pace, but the Nimbus 27 does an equally good job as the 26 for that easy, slow, comfort running. If you wanted more cush than the Nimbus 26 offered, you'll absolutely love this shoe. If you prefer things a little stiffer, then I'd stick with the Nimbus 26. If you own the 26, I wouldn't rush out and buy the 27 until you need to. The changes aren't that pronounced. The other plus, I think, is that the Nimbus 27 feel built to last. This is a shoe that should have long mileage lifespan, and even if that foam bottoms out a bit, I think it's still going to be more cushioned than many shoes out there. If you like your easy run shoes to also pack a bit more versatility though, I think the new Nova Blast 5 might be worth a look. Probably not as sort of overall cushion, but it's got a little bit more softness. I personally like the Brooks Ghost Max 2, which is a bit snappier, but it's not as cushy and soft as the Nimbus 27. I also think the New Balance 1080 V14 now offers sort of Nimbus style easy comfort, but maybe a bit more energy as well.
That's it from us on this review of the Asics Gel-Nimbus 27. Thanks a lot for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe and click that little bell. And if you're going to catch and flow, you can find it to our podcast, which comes out a couple of times each month. Thanks a lot for watching. Catch you next time.